Hi, this is Mary Madonia. I'm here to give you 10 fast tips that executives can use to improve a presentation or speech that they have coming up. Tip number 1, doing your homework still applies. It's okay if you bring notes to a presentation or a speech that you have to give. What you're trying to avoid is reading your speech, or worse, reading your slides to the audience. When you're preparing, be sure to say your speech out loud. I've caught many mistakes that when reviewed in my head sounded fine, but when I said them out loud, they took on a whole new meaning. 2, be yourself. There's no need to imitate speakers that you've seen or retell stories that you've heard or try snappy techniques. Being natural is going to serve you the best. A sales executive in the wind energy field wanted tips to improve a speech he was working on. I started our coaching session by having him give the speech to me. My first question when he was done was, "Where did you go?" This man typically smiled, was upbeat, and had a great sense of humor. His speech was completely devoid of that. Most of my coaching with him was just to bring out who he really is. He's now been asked to be the company spokesperson. Be yourself. That will make your speech snappy. If there's a microphone in the room, use it. A common error I see executives make is, "I don't need a microphone." You may have a strong voice, but for people in the back of the room to hear you, you will have to shout. That means the whole front half of the room feels like you're shouting at them. 50% of your employees being yelled at is probably not the result that you're going for. There's a science to using a mic. My general rule is that for an audience of 50 or more, yes, only 50, I get mic'd. I want all of them to hear me the same way. And in case you ever have to do your own sound check, here's a trick that I learned from sound folks that has really helped me through the years. Start by turning the sound up really loud, inappropriately loud. I then get a second person to start turning the sound down until I can't hear my voice over the PA system. So in other words, I'll still hear my voice, but I'm not hearing it come through the sound system. When I can no longer hear my voice, it's adjusted to about natural level for everyone in the audience. Great tip for having great sound every time. Tip number 4, if there's a stage or a riser, use it. The bigger the room and the bigger the audience, the more important this is going to be. It allows everyone to see you, not just the first few rows. Although it is good to go out into an audience, make it for short stretches to prove a specific point. Then get back to the stage or the riser. You can still work a room from the front of the room and from a riser by giving eye contact and being sure to look at people in various parts of the room. Literally go from right to left and front to back and in the center of the room and mix it up a little bit. Create a system that you think is going to work good for you. Tip number 5, watch the joke. Most jokes are risky. Number 1, they have to be relevant and often they aren't germane to your topic. Number 2, a joke has to be told and timed flawlessly or it will fail. And number 3, most jokes offend in some way. There's going to be some person or some group that's going to find it offensive. Each of these is high risk for failure. What you have to say in your speech is too important to risk that type of a bad start. There are lots of ways to start off with a bang, and they won't take as much work. Here are 6 of them. 1, you can use a quote. 2, share a statistic. 3, tell a story. Use one from your own life experiences. 4, ask a question. 5, share a fact. And 6, make a shocking statement. Then tie what you've said into the topic of the day. Any of these will make for a solid start and get your audience's attention at the beginning, all without the risks that are attached to jokes. Tip number 6, keep some secrets from the audience. Now, this sounds a little crazy, but I find that a mistake that speakers can make is telling the audience things they don't need to know, but will set you up for failure. For example, I might hear somebody say, "I'm not a professional speaker," or "I don't understand this technology," or "I don't have enough time." Let's take a look at each of those 3 that I just mentioned. When you say, "I'm not a professional speaker," The audience starts to prove you right by finding things wrong with what you do as a speaker. So it's almost like they're in the back of the room taking notes on what you do wrong. The second one, I don't understand this technology. When you say that to the audience, you might as well say to them, I'm a relic and I don't understand anything new that's happening. You didn't get to your level by being a relic. Learn to use the technology that you're going to need for your presentation. You just need to know enough to get through the presentation. And have someone on your team that will check the technology ahead of time so you know that everything is working before you get there. And that last one, when you say, I don't have enough time, people have one of three thoughts. They're going to think the meeting planner is a poor planner, which is going to make them look bad. And I'm sure you don't want to make people look bad in front of their peers. Number two, they could think you're a poor planner. I know you don't want to send that message. And the third one they could think is, since they don't have enough time, I'm going to miss out on something. So they're concerned about missing out on critical information that you're going to have to skip because you don't have enough time. Audiences don't need to know you're not a professional. They only know what's in front of them. They don't need to know that you don't understand the technology. They just need to see that the technology that you're using works today. And as far as time goes, they don't know how much time you're supposed to take or how much time you were allotted or the things that went wrong behind the scenes. Let them see a meeting that goes flawlessly. Tip number 7, your slides are probably not as legible as you think you are to the audience, especially if you're using charts. Assume that they can't read them. Use things like arrows and other indicators. And if you can, try and use other drawings or icons or pictures to help explain what the chart says. So in other words, on subsequent charts, make a better explanation of what the chart can't show you just by looking at the chart. Tip number 8, use slides cautiously. Be careful about under and overutilizing slides. If something needs to be visualized, then have a visual for it, but be careful about going so far that nearly every word you say is on the slides. In the case of the latter, most audience feedback is, I can read slides myself. They don't want to have slides read to them. You don't need a slide for every point that you make. Use slides to enhance, to help make a point, and to create a visual. Tip number 9, pay attention to how much time you've been given and what time you need to start and what time you need to end. A common frustration that I hear from meeting planners is that an executive went over time. I'm not talking about a couple of minutes. Most people have built in 5, even as much as 10 minutes for a program. I'm talking about an executive that goes over 30 or 45 minutes and ends up backing up the entire schedule. This can be a real problem in a number of ways. One, you could have paid professionals that are speaking after you, and most likely they've got flights immediately after their program. That only means one thing. They're going to have to cut their program short because if they've got another engagement to get to, they won't be able to change their flight. So now your organization ends up missing out on critical information that you've paid to hear but won't be able to. Another problem is if people need to stay late in order to get all of the information. Most of us still have a bit of a kid in us, and we really like getting out of a meeting even 5 minutes early. It can really put a smile on someone's face. Having to stay late does the opposite. Keep in mind, your staff are aware that you're the top boss, so they're not going to give you feedback about time or pull you off the stage. A trick I use is to designate someone as my timekeeper. I give them signs the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And I have each of the following: 15, 5, 1, and end. They represent 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, and end. So I've got several warnings that let me know the end of my program is coming without having to look down at my watch or a clock. I'm able to stay in the moment, relax, and be more spontaneous. Use whatever works for you, but that's a couple tips on helping you with watching your time. And tip number 10 is to consider working with a professional that can give you feedback on your speech. Speaking is an acquired skill that many people take years to perfect. Be careful of falling into the trap of thinking you're too successful for feedback. I've been a professional speaker for over 25 years. I still get feedback from experts that I respect, and I still use coaches. A coach can help you focus on what will make you better, give you time to practice, and give you great feedback. Well, those are my 10 tips to help improve any speech that you're working on. I am Miriam Madonia, and if there's anything I can do to help you with your speeches, don't hesitate to reach out.